I never thought one text message could change everything. It was a normal Friday evening, or so I thought. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, just killing time before the weekend. Then came the message. Hey, I'm at the Bachelorette party, don't wait up. I'll be late. Now, if I'm being honest, I should have just let it go. I should have assumed it was just another wild night for her and her friends. She had talked about this party for weeks, some wild night out before the wedding. I wasn't bothered by the fact that she was out without me. I was fine with it. I even encouraged her to go, get it out of her system before we tied the knot. A little part of me secretly envied her freedom, to be honest. But then, as I was reading her text, something caught my attention. A tiny detail, hidden between the lines. Don't wait up. I'll be late. No problem there, right? But something about that "I'll be late" stuck with me. She'd been looking forward to the party for weeks, so why say late like it was some sort of afterthought? And then, the kicker, the real twist that I wouldn't even realize until later, came right after that. A second message. Also, I'll be with some friends. Now, why was that important to mention? I didn't think much of it at first, just a casual, oh, that's cool kind of thought. But then the questions started rolling in. Which friends? She had been vague all week about the guest list. She'd mentioned a few names, but there was something off about how she said it. It was as though she was trying to cover something up without saying it outright. I pushed the thought aside, reminding myself I was just overthinking. After all, who wouldn't be excited about their last big party before the wedding? So, I decided to stop letting my mind run wild. I let the evening pass. An hour went by, and I was about to fall asleep on the couch when I heard her voice. She was back, but it was odd. No knock on the door, no casual, "I'm home." She just opened the door quietly, walked in, and closed it behind her without saying a word. The silence was strange, and something in the air felt different, like when a room gets too quiet, and it makes you feel uneasy. She didn't greet me or say she had a good time. Nothing. That's when I knew something was off. I stood up, about to ask her how it went. And just as I opened my mouth, her phone buzzed. She looked down at it, and that was when the room seemed to freeze. She didn't answer, but I saw her hand tighten around the phone. The notification was from someone named Ethan. I tried to shake the thought off. Maybe it was just a friend, nothing to get worked up about. I had no right to assume the worst. Yet, a voice in my head whispered that I should ask. Why didn't she mention Ethan? I didn't know him. Her friends, sure, but this guy, Ethan? The name felt unfamiliar, and I hated how quickly my mind started to race. I watched as she stared at the screen, her face blank. And that's when it hit me. She didn't look like she was thinking about how to reply. She looked guilty, almost like she was hiding something. Before I could say anything, she looked up and spoke. "I'm exhausted. I'm going to bed." And just like that, she walked away, leaving me standing in the hallway, holding on to 1,000 questions I couldn't ask. The next few days felt like a blur, and if I'm honest, I was starting to second-guess myself. It wasn't just the awkwardness from that night. There was something about her distance, her unwillingness to talk about the party, that gnawed at me. She never mentioned Ethan, never even brought it up. She was the same as always, smiling, asking about my day, but there was something under the surface that I couldn't ignore. I tried to push it out of my mind. She was tired. She needed a break. It wasn't unusual for her to retreat into her own world for a while after a night out with friends. I kept telling myself that. But when I looked at her, I felt like a stranger was standing there. She wasn't the woman I knew. This wasn't the woman I had been planning my life with. By the time the weekend rolled around, I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to confront her. I wasn't going to go digging. But I was going to pay attention. If something was off, I'd know. And if something was really wrong, well, I wouldn't hesitate to ask. Saturday night, as I was getting ready to head to bed, I heard the door open. This time, there was no stealth. No quiet entry. She was home, but it was different. The front door closed with a sharp sound, and her footsteps were louder, more deliberate than I remembered. She was wearing a coat, and her hair was a mess, like she'd just thrown it up into a bun. She didn't look like someone who had just come from a good time. She looked disoriented. When she walked past me, she barely acknowledged me, but I noticed her phone in her hand. And once again, my stomach twisted. I had seen that phone before, clutched in her hand, face down, as if she was trying to hide it from me. I couldn't see the screen, but I could tell she was scrolling furiously, trying to hide something. "Hey, are you okay?" I asked, stepping in her way. It wasn't the question I'd planned, but it was the only one that came out. She stopped, froze, and turned her head toward me with a half-smile. It didn't reach her eyes. "Yeah, just tired," she said, her voice flat. "It's been a long weekend." A long weekend? I couldn't believe she said that with a straight face. There was no excitement in her voice, no trace of the fun she had promised. She had barely told me a thing about the party, and now she was acting like everything was fine. I wanted to ask her about Ethan. I wanted to demand answers. But there was this overwhelming fear creeping into my thoughts. What if I was wrong? What if it was nothing? I couldn't be the overbearing, jealous boyfriend. I couldn't let my doubts ruin this relationship. But the worst part was, I didn't trust myself anymore. How much of this was my own insecurity? Was I just imagining things? I didn't want to accuse her without evidence, but the way she was acting. It felt like I was the only one who hadn't noticed the cracks in our relationship. The silence stretched out between us, thick with unspoken words. She looked away, trying to push past me, but I couldn't let her go without saying something more. "Is there something you need to tell me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, but it cut through the stillness like a knife. She turned to look at me, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then, she let out a soft sigh and walked past me, muttering, "I'm going to bed." She didn't say it like she used to. There was no tenderness in her voice, no promise of an explanation. I was left standing there, unsure of what to do next. Part of me wanted to storm in and demand answers. Another part of me just wanted to let it go. Maybe I was overthinking things. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The next morning, I couldn't shake the unease that settled in the pit of my stomach. It was like a cloud hanging over me, casting a shadow on everything. She was still asleep when I woke up, curled up in bed, her face peaceful, almost angelic. For a moment, I tried to convince myself that maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe she just needed time to decompress after the party, needed space from all the chaos that came with planning a wedding. After all, things had been stressful, and who was I to expect her to keep everything together perfectly? But then I thought back to that photo, her with Ethan. Who was he? And why hadn't she mentioned him? Why did she keep deflecting? Why did she look so uncomfortable in that photo? I tried to push these thoughts away. I didn't want to be the kind of person who jumped to conclusions, but the more I tried to brush it off, the more it seemed like there was something I wasn't seeing. When she woke up a few hours later, the usual light in her eyes was missing. She was distant, not the woman I knew. Her movements were sluggish, as if she were carrying a weight I couldn't understand. She stretched, yawned, and gave me a weak smile as she stumbled into the kitchen. "Morning," she muttered, reaching for a mug from the cabinet. I tried to act normal, to mask my growing frustration with casual conversation. I told her about my day, about the boring meeting I had with my boss, but it felt like I was talking to a wall. She didn't respond the way she usually did. No playful teasing, no interest in the details of my day. Her eyes darted between her phone and the coffee machine as if she couldn't wait to get away from me. I decided it was time. I couldn't go on like this, pretending I wasn't feeling the tension. I had to ask. So I did. "Lily, what happened last night?" The words left my mouth before I could stop them, and instantly, I saw her stiffen. She didn't look at me. She just stared at the counter like it held all the answers. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice too soft. She was trying to play it off, but I could hear the hesitation, the lie behind the question. "Ethan," I said, watching her face change, just slightly, but enough for me to notice. "Who is he? And why didn't you mention him when you told me about the party?" For a moment, she didn't say anything. She just stared at her phone, the silence between us stretching on. I could feel my heart racing, my palms sweating. I wanted to push further, demand she tell me everything, but something in her expression made me pause. She looked up at me, her face twisted in frustration, maybe even a little guilt. "Ethan's a friend from college. He's nothing," she said quickly, but I wasn't convinced. "That's not what it looked like in the photo," I said, voice tight. "You looked uncomfortable, like you didn't want to be with him." She dropped her head, as if trying to avoid my gaze. "It's nothing. Really, I swear. I'm sorry I didn't mention him. It's just not important." I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't telling me everything. The way she spoke, the way she couldn't meet my eyes, it all screamed something's wrong. And I wasn't stupid. I knew I couldn't just let it go. But I didn't want to fight with her, not now. Not when we were so close to the wedding. I told myself to trust her, to believe that it was all a misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew I was fooling myself. I didn't press the issue any further that day. We spent the rest of the morning in silence, the distance between us growing with every second. It was like we were strangers living under the same roof. Later that afternoon, as she got ready for a girls' night with her friends, I tried to ignore the sinking feeling in my chest. I should have been happy for her, right? She was going out to have fun before the wedding. It was supposed to be a light-hearted night, no stress. But when she left, I couldn't help but feel a cold knot forming in my stomach. There was more to this than just a harmless night out. As she walked out the door, I watched her for a moment longer than I should have. She didn't even turn around to say goodbye, and that's when it hit me. It wasn't the party that had me on edge, it was the change in her. Something was different, and I wasn't sure if it was me or her. I could have waited until she came home, could have asked more questions, tried to get to the truth. But what if I was wrong? What if I was just making it all up in my head? I couldn't live like this, full of doubt. But I also couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when clearly it wasn't. That night, as the hours passed, I tried to distract myself. I figured I'd stay out of her way, let her have her night, and maybe tomorrow we'd talk about everything. I didn't want to push her too hard, especially since we were so close to the wedding. But the more I tried to ignore it, the more my mind spun out of control. I could barely focus on anything. I kept imagining her laughing with Ethan, whispering secrets, sharing moments that weren't meant for me. The jealousy, the insecurity, it started to eat at me. Around 11 p.m., she texted me, as expected. "Hey, I'm going to be late. Don't wait up. I'll see you tomorrow." That was the third time that week she had said she'd be late when she was out with her friends. Something about it just didn't feel right. What did she mean by late? Was she really out with friends, or was it something else entirely? I lay there in bed, my phone in hand, staring at her message. I tried to fall asleep, but I kept tossing and turning. I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't being honest with me. What was she hiding? Was she hiding something from me? Who was she really with? The doubt settled in like a thick fog, and I realized I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I needed answers, and I couldn't wait any longer. I grabbed my phone and pulled up her social media. I know it wasn't healthy, and I know it wasn't right, but I was desperate. I told myself I wouldn't snoop, but my hands were already moving, typing her name into the search bar before I could stop myself. There it was, a post from a few hours earlier. Lily was tagged in a picture, surrounded by her friends, except one. Ethan was there too, his arm around her. It didn't look like a group shot. It looked personal, like a moment they shared. The caption underneath read, "A night to remember. Making memories before the big day." The other girls were smiling, having a good time, but Lily's face, her expression was completely different. She looked distracted, distant, like she wasn't even fully there. And then, in the background, I saw it. Ethan leaning in a little too close, his face too close to hers, as if he was about to kiss her. My heart stopped. The photo seemed innocent enough at first glance, but I knew better. It was that subtle detail, the way she was standing, the closeness with Ethan, that set me off. It made me question everything I thought I knew about her, about us. I sat there, frozen. I didn't know what to do next. I wasn't ready for this, but I had to confront her. I had to know the truth. As I stared at the image on my phone, I heard her keys in the door. My pulse quickened. I wasn't sure whether I was angry, hurt, or just confused. I couldn't put it into words. I heard her footsteps as she entered the apartment, and for a moment, I just stayed there in the dark, holding my phone, trying to figure out what to say. She came into the living room, glancing at me with that same tired look in her eyes. "Hey," she said softly, but I could tell she was avoiding eye contact. She took her coat off, her movements slow and almost robotic. "Hey," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. My heart was pounding, my thoughts racing. I wanted to ask her about the picture. I wanted to demand an explanation, but instead, I just looked at her, waiting for her to speak first. She dropped her purse on the couch and sat down, clearly exhausted. But I couldn't ignore the nagging question that burned in the back of my mind. I wasn't going to let her off the hook this time. "Lily," I said, my voice firm, though my hands were shaking. "I saw the picture. With Ethan. What's going on?" She froze. Her eyes darted toward me, but she quickly looked away, focusing on the floor. She bit her lip, like she was trying to figure out what to say. The silence between us felt suffocating, as though every second that passed made it harder to breathe. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said finally, her voice shaky. I didn't believe her. The words felt empty, like she was just going through the motions. I could see the guilt in her eyes, the way she couldn't meet my gaze. That was enough for me. "Don't lie to me," I said, a little more forcefully than I intended. "Why was Ethan so close to you in that picture? Why didn't you tell me he was there?" She flinched, her shoulders tense. "It wasn't like that," she said quickly, her voice cracking. "I swear, we're just friends. You're overthinking this, please." But I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something from me. The way she avoided my gaze, the way she reacted when I mentioned Ethan, it all pointed to something more. And in that moment, I realized that whatever we had, it wasn't the same anymore. I could feel the tension thick in the air, like everything we had built was slowly unraveling in front of me. Lily's face was pale, and her hands trembled as she sat there, her eyes downcast, avoiding my stare. She wasn't the woman I knew. The woman I had fallen in love with never hid things, never dodged questions. This woman sitting in front of me, though, was a stranger. "Lily, what's going on?" I said again, my voice quieter this time, trying to hold on to the thread of calm I had left. "I'm not stupid. I saw the picture. The way you looked with him. It wasn't just a friend moment." Her eyes flickered up to meet mine, and for a second, I thought I saw something that looked like regret, or guilt, or maybe even fear. But before I could grasp onto it, she turned her head quickly, as if to shake it off. "It wasn't like that," she repeated, her voice almost a whisper. "I promise. Ethan's just, I don't know, he's been a friend for years. We've known each other since college, and it wasn't anything more than just catching up." Her explanation sounded rehearsed, like she had said those words before, 1,000 times in her head, convincing herself that it was true. But the way she said it didn't match the situation. She wasn't convincing me, not this time. "I don't believe you," I said softly, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. "You're lying to me, and you know it. Why won't you just tell me the truth?" She didn't respond immediately, just stared at the floor. Her hands were twisting in her lap, as if she were trying to wring out all her anxiety. Her silence spoke louder than anything she could have said. I watched her closely, trying to understand what was going on in her head. What was she hiding? Was it Ethan? Or was there something else? Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she sighed deeply, her shoulders sagging. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said, her voice barely audible. "I didn't want to tell you because I was scared of what you might think. You're right. I'm not being honest with you. But it's complicated, and I didn't know how to tell you. I never meant for it to get this far." My heart raced, and every word she spoke just made it harder to breathe. I felt sick to my stomach. There it was. She wasn't just hiding a harmless friendship. There was something else. Something bigger, something deeper. "Get this far," I repeated, trying to understand. "What are you talking about?" She closed her eyes, her voice trembling as she finally let it out. "I've been seeing Ethan. Behind your back. For the past few months." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. My mind went blank for a second, trying to process what she had just confessed. My stomach twisted, and all the air seemed to leave my lungs. Seeing Ethan? For months? Behind my back? How had I been so blind? "I never meant for it to happen," she rushed to say, her words stumbling over each other. "It started as just a conversation here and there, just someone to talk to. But then, things changed. I got confused. I didn't know what I wanted, and I thought maybe I could have both him and you. But I was wrong. I made a mistake. A huge mistake. And now I'm here, ruining everything." I could barely process her words, let alone respond. She had been seeing him, behind my back, while we were planning a life together, while we were about to get married. The betrayal stung, deeper than anything I had ever imagined. "You were going to marry me," I said, the words coming out in disbelief. "And you were seeing him. Behind my back. For months." She nodded, her face streaked with tears. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I never meant for you to find out like this, but I couldn't keep lying. I couldn't keep hiding it from you. I know I've hurt you, and I don't deserve your forgiveness." I sat there, stunned. I wanted to yell, to scream at her, to tell her everything I had been holding back all these years. But in that moment, all I could do was sit there, paralyzed by the weight of her confession. The room felt suffocating. The trust one thought we had was shattered, and now all that was left were the broken pieces of a relationship that had seemed so perfect just a few weeks ago. I stood up abruptly, needing space, needing to get away from her, from the truth that had come crashing into my life. "I need to think," I muttered, not even sure if she heard me. I walked out of the apartment, slamming the door behind me, the cool air hitting me as I stepped onto the balcony. I leaned over the railing, taking deep breaths, trying to steady myself. How could she have done this to me? How could I have been so blind? I stood there for what felt like hours, the cool breeze doing nothing to ease the heat that had settled in my chest. The weight of Lily's confession was crushing, and every breath felt heavier than the last. My mind was racing, filled with a million questions, none of which made sense. I had never seen this side of her, not in all the years we'd been together. The woman I thought I knew, who I thought I could trust with everything, had betrayed me in the worst possible way. But even as I stood there, trying to process everything, I couldn't help but feel a flicker of confusion. There was something about the way Lily had confessed that made me hesitate. The guilt in her eyes, the tremble in her voice. It wasn't just the words that felt off. There was something she hadn't said, something she wasn't telling me. I turned back to face the apartment, trying to gather the strength to go back inside. When I opened the door, I saw her sitting on the couch, her hands clasped tightly together, staring blankly ahead. She didn't even look up when I entered, but I could feel the weight of her guilt pressing down on me like a physical force. She was waiting for me to say something, to react, but I didn't know where to start. How do you even begin to process something like this? "Lily," I said, my voice trembling. "How long were you planning on keeping this from me?" She didn't answer immediately, just shook her head as if she couldn't bear to speak the truth. Her tears were falling freely now, her face streaked with regret. I could see that she was broken, but it didn't change the fact that she had shattered everything I thought I knew about us. "I didn't know how to stop," she whispered. "I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to lose you, but I couldn't keep pretending either. I was scared of what you'd think. I didn't know what to do anymore." The desperation in her voice was painful to listen to, but it didn't change what she had done. She had crossed a line, and no amount of apologies could take that away. "Why Ethan?" I asked, my voice strained. "Why him? Why not talk to me if something was wrong?" "I don't know," she said, choking on the words. "It wasn't supposed to happen. It started as just talking, someone to confide in, someone who understood me. And then it became more. And I let it happen. I don't know why I let it happen." The more she spoke, the more confused I became. Part of me wanted to scream at her for what she had done, to demand answers. But another part of me, some small part, was still trying to make sense of it all. Why had she kept it a secret for so long? Why hadn't she come to me when things started changing? But I wasn't sure I could keep asking the same questions over and over, hoping for a different answer. The truth was right in front of me, and it was too painful to ignore. "Do you love him?" I asked, the question hanging between us like a weight too heavy to lift. Her eyes widened, and she looked at me like I had slapped her. The look on her face, surprise, shock, and then a deep, guttural pain, told me everything I needed to know. She didn't love him. Not in the way she loved me, at least not at first. But the fact that she had let it go this far, the fact that she had let him into our life, it made me question everything I had thought was real. "No," she said quickly, her voice sharp with panic. "No, I don't love him. I love you. I always have. But I lost myself somewhere along the way, and I didn't know how to fix it. I was scared to lose you, but I also didn't want to feel so alone anymore. I thought maybe I could have both." I stared at her, trying to process her words, but they didn't make sense. How could she love me, and yet do this to me? How could she betray the trust we had built over years, just to fulfill whatever need she was missing? "I don't know if I can believe you anymore," I said, my voice barely a whisper. The words hurt me as much as they must have hurt her, but I had to say them. "How do I know that this wasn't just another lie? How do I know that you're not still hiding something?" Her face crumpled, and she started to sob harder. "I don't know," she whispered through her tears. "I don't know how to make it right. I can't undo what I've done, but I want to fix this. I want to make it up to you, somehow." Her words were desperate, pleading, but they didn't change the fact that everything between us had been shattered. Trust had been broken, and no amount of apologies or promises could fix that. I wasn't sure if I could ever trust her again, not the way I had before. I turned away from her, my mind racing, heart aching. I needed time to think, time to process everything she had just told me. I couldn't make any decisions in the heat of the moment. But what I did know was that everything had changed. I didn't know if we could come back from this. I didn't know if she could fix the damage she had done. But I did know one thing for sure. Nothing would ever be the same again. The silence between us was suffocating. Lily had retreated into herself, her body curled up on the couch, her eyes empty, staring at nothing. I could see the desperation in her face, but I was too angry, too confused, to feel anything but betrayal. Her words echoed in my mind, but they felt hollow. I love you. I always have. If she really loved me, how could she have done this? How could she have crossed that line, kept it hidden for months, and then expected everything to go back to normal? I couldn't look at her. The sight of her, so broken, made me want to scream, but I kept it inside, burying the rage that was building in my chest. It wasn't just the fact that she had cheated, it was the deceit, the lies, the way she had pretended everything was fine while sneaking around behind my back. How could she live with herself knowing that she had betrayed everything we'd built together? I grabbed my coat from the hook by the door and walked toward the exit. I needed air. I needed space. I didn't know where I was going, but I couldn't stay in that apartment for another second. Where are you going? Lily's voice was small, weak, almost afraid. She had to know that I wasn't coming back, at least not the same way. But still, she asked, like I hadn't already made up my mind. I need some time, I said flatly, not turning around. I can't do this right now. I can't even look at you right now. The door slammed behind me, and I felt the weight of it press down on me as I stepped out into the night air. The cold hit me like a shock, but it was welcome. It was the only thing that made me feel alive. I walked aimlessly, not knowing where I was headed, my thoughts racing faster than my feet could carry me. Every street corner, every passerby, every sound seemed to remind me of what had just happened. How did I miss it? How did I not see this coming? I pulled out my phone, instinctively searching for something to distract myself. A message popped up on the screen. It was from Lily. I almost didn't open it, but my finger clicked on it before I could stop myself. Please, the message read, please let me explain. I know I've hurt you, but I need you to understand. I love you. I don't want to lose you. The words burned into my screen. She wanted to explain? After everything she had done, she thought an explanation would fix it? There were no words that could fix this. No explanation that could make this okay. I sat on a bench in the park, staring at the phone, my fingers frozen on the keys. The cold air stung my skin, but I felt nothing. My mind went back to everything she had said. I thought I could have both. That was the line that stuck with me the most. She thought she could have both me and Ethan. She thought she could juggle us, keep me in the dark while she had an affair on the side. That was the worst part. She didn't even respect me enough to tell me the truth. Instead, she chose to lie. She chose him. I stood up suddenly, throwing my phone into my pocket. I didn't want to think about it anymore. I didn't want to feel like this. So, I walked, just walked, with no destination in mind, no plan. My feet led me through the streets like I was in a trance. My heart felt heavy, my chest tight. But somewhere, deep inside me, I knew. This wasn't just about the betrayal. This wasn't just about what she had done. This was about how I let it all happen. I ignored the signs. I let her slip away while I was busy pretending everything was fine. I never saw her pulling away, never noticed the cracks in our relationship until they were too wide to fix. I found myself standing outside a bar, the neon lights flashing in the window. I didn't know why I stopped there. Maybe I was looking for a distraction, a place to drown out the noise in my head. Maybe I was looking for something to numb the pain. I walked inside and found a seat at the bar. I ordered a drink, my hand shaking slightly as I held the glass. The cold liquid burned down my throat, but it didn't numb the ache. Nothing could numb the pain of knowing the woman I was supposed to marry had lied to me, betrayed me, and shattered everything I thought I knew about love. I didn't know what I was doing anymore. All I could feel was the weight of the choice ahead of me. What was I supposed to do? Go back and pretend everything was fine? Go back and let her apologize? Let her try to fix what was already broken beyond repair? The door opened behind me, and I heard the sound of footsteps approaching. My heart skipped a beat. It wasn't Lily. It was someone else, another woman, another face in the crowd. But the moment I heard the footsteps, something inside me stirred. Maybe it was the loneliness. Maybe it was the fact that I was sitting here, drowning in my own thoughts, trying to make sense of everything. I didn't want to feel this way anymore. I didn't want to be the man sitting at the bar, broken and unsure. I stood up abruptly, leaving the glass behind, and walked out into the night. The cool air felt sharper now, like a slap to the face, but I needed it. I needed to clear my head. As I stepped back onto the streets, I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going back to her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The next few days were a blur. I didn't return to the apartment, choosing instead to stay with a friend. I needed space, needed time to think. My mind was still reeling from everything Lily had confessed, and the pain of the betrayal was so raw, so intense, I could barely function. I spent my days walking around the city, trying to put one foot in front of the other, but every corner I turned felt like a reminder of the life I thought I had. I thought I would never be able to look at her again, not after everything she had done. But as the days passed, something shifted inside me. The anger, the hurt, the confusion, they didn't go away, but they became more manageable. I realized I had been carrying this weight of resentment, but it wasn't doing me any good. It was only holding me back from healing. I still didn't have the answers I was looking for, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let this define me. I wasn't going to let this destroy me. I had spent so much time blaming her for what happened, but I had to take responsibility for my own part in it too. I had allowed myself to ignore the signs, to look the other way when I should have been paying attention. I had been so focused on keeping the peace that I let things slide, and I couldn't keep blaming her for that. After a week of soul-searching and reflection, I finally made the decision to go back to the apartment. I wasn't sure what I was going to say to Lily or how we would move forward, but I knew I couldn't keep running from the truth. I had to face it, and I had to face her. When I walked through the door, she was sitting on the couch, her eyes swollen from crying. But there was something different about her this time. The guilt in her eyes had softened, replaced by a quiet resolve. She had changed, and so had I. "I'm sorry," she said immediately, her voice barely a whisper. "I know I can't fix what I've done, but I want to try. I don't want to lose you." I took a deep breath, looking at her, really looking at her for the first time in days. It wasn't just the apology that mattered. It was the fact that she was willing to face the consequences of her actions, willing to be vulnerable and admit she had made a mistake. I walked over to her, sitting down beside her on the couch. "I don't know what's going to happen," I said quietly. "I don't know if we can fix this, but I want to try too. I don't want to throw everything away just because of one mistake. We've been through too much together." Her eyes lit up, and she took my hand in hers, her grip tight, as if she were afraid I would disappear again. "We'll work through it," she said, the sincerity in her voice ringing true. "I don't want to lose you, and I don't want us to be defined by this mistake. We both deserve more than that." For the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to hope. Maybe things wouldn't go back to how they were before, but that didn't mean we couldn't rebuild. Maybe it wouldn't be easy, maybe it would take time, but the one thing I knew for sure was that we weren't giving up on each other. Not yet. The road ahead wouldn't be perfect. We would have to work through the trust issues, the hurt, the mistakes we'd both made. But we were both willing to try. And that, I realized, was enough. We had a chance to rebuild. And that's all I needed to begin again.